Welcome to the Work in Progress podcast. This is a space where we want to create conversations around things that actually matter. Thanks for joining us today. We hope these words encourage you to know that no matter where we are in our journeys, we're all still a work in progress.
Yo, what's up, Work in Progress family? We're back. We're back again.
My friends, we're back.
What? Dude, come on, man. Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Are we friends?
Yeah, we're friends.
Let's go.
Facebook friends?
Nah, dude. No,
Yeah, bro.
no digital.
We're friends, man.
Dude, you've never said that before, so
We're friends.
I'm getting a little emotional.
We're friends.
Let's talk about friendship today, man.
Let's do it.
It seems like an important topic, and it
Friends,
seems like
super important.
it seems like a very obvious one that's kind of overlooked. You know, like
Yeah.
how your friendships are and what they do to you as
Yeah.
a human and as a follower of Christ.
Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Proverbs 13:20.
Dang, son, did you memorize that?
No, well, I do have it memorized, but I didn't know where it exactly was found. So I did have to look it up. But walk with
good.
the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm.
Yeah.
I think that's the launching point for friendship. So away we go, right? Because everybody's heard the old saying, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you who you are. Sound familiar?
Yep.
Yeah. So we have these little sayings about friendships that are common. We probably hear them in elementary school. As we begin to learn in life, we hear about friends pretty early on. And it's funny that those things come directly from scripture. So walk the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So there we go. Friends.
what does the Bible say about friendship though? Like, let's dive in a little bit deeper and say, like, what does the Bible say about friendship? You know, I think that's a good launching point. Like you said.
Yeah. Bible talks a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think when we're talking about friendships, that's where we have to start, is the levels of friendship, because we know in the English language, we have many different ways that we have one word, friends, but it actually describes many different types of relationships, right? We have our acquaintances, who are friends without being super close. Like, we know them.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the people that are probably your Facebook friends.
Yep.
Right. Your followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
Those are like your acquaintances. Like, you know them maybe from like high school or middle school, or that's probably back as far as you go. Or family friends. Right? You have these people. You don't talk to them often. You're not really in each other's lives, but they're there. Right. The next level is like your friends that you actually hang out with. You know, people that you get with once a month or so.
Right.
Grab dinner or have them over or watch a game or something. Right. Then you have your next level of friends. I don't have a name for it, right? But you have your next level of friend, people you see probably weekly, maybe the ones you have at work, people that cross paths often. And then you have like your most intimate circle of friends, like your 3, 4, 5 closest people in your life.
Yeah.
That know all of your secrets, that know all of the good, the bad, the ugly, that you go to advise, that. So there's different levels of friendships. And of course, in the English language, we have one word, friend, that describes all of it.
Right.
I think the Bible speaks very clearly on relationships. And so hopefully you take what the Bible says about relationships and plug it into your friendships. And so lots of stuff. Proverbs is a great place to walk through when talking about friends. Paul writes a lot about relationships. So Corinthians is a big book about relationships. James has a lot of advice about relationships. So it's sprinkled all over. But I think the core, the root of all of what those guys are talking about, is you have to be careful with who you invest your time with.
Yeah.
Because they do rub off on you. You may rub off on them, but they will definitely rub off on you. And so there you go.
Yeah, man. As Paul says, bad company corrupts good character, right? And so I think there's a misconception or like a misunderstanding where, like, if you start to become closer to Christ in your walk, and of course you want to share that with others, especially your friends.
Yeah.
If you're going to hang out with a group of friends that, you normally would grab a beer with at their house, probably not the best time to go share God, right? Like, you gotta really pick and choose wisely. And I think that, like you said, like, look at your friends and I'll show you your future. Like, I think that really plays into it. And so navigating that as a young adult, 20s, 30s, you're transitioning out of this period of like being in high school, wanting to have fun, like kind of, honestly, that's where a lot of people experiment with parties and like just being kind of crazy, right? That's where they kind of go wild. And then leading into college and then post college, man, like let's navigate that journey, because I think that resonates a lot with our demographic. And so like, how do you know the people that you knew in high school or the people that you knew in college that you're still friends with today are good friends for you to have in your life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you just look directly at how they live their life.
Yeah, it's good.
I think that's it's really simple. Like, right, what's that? If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. Like, it's probably a duck, right? So you just look at their life. Like, if they are followers of Christ and you see the fruit in their life, like they go to church and they're part of a life group and there's life change and they're getting closer to Christ and you can see it. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good friendship to keep. On the opposite end, like if they are getting drunk and getting high and not responsible and really maybe not that great of a friend, maybe there's some of those that you can create distance between you and them, maybe to the point where you have to just sever the relationship. But there's also, like I said, there's levels to these friendships. And so I think the most important thing is the people that you let closest to you need to be the ones that are chasing after Christ like you are.
Right.
And so especially as you navigate through end of high school, college, end of college, adulthood, it can be actually the most lonely time.
Yeah.
Because you're so used to being around people 24/7. Like, right, for most of us that went to like, public high schools, especially in Texas, even the small ones, right? Even your smaller high schools, you probably have 30, 40, 50 people that you come into contact with every day.
Yeah.
At least. You get to college, and if you go to even like a small private college like I went to, you have 20, 30, 40 people in your classes that you're with every day.
Yeah.
Right. And then for some of us, we get out of college, we get out of those areas, and maybe, especially now that so many people work from home or work by themselves, maybe you see one or two people a day. And maybe those 1 or 2 people a day are digital only.
Yeah, true.
Talk about a sharp drop off. And so sometimes out of our desperation, because we're lonely, we seek the wrong friendships. Like, we'll just take anybody and everybody. Like, yeah, you'll hang out with me. Great. I'll do whatever you want to do because I'm lonely. And that could be a problem. And so I think look at your friends, look at your closest circle of friends, who you spend the most amount of time with, and actually see, is their life something that your life should also mimic?
Yeah.
Because whether you think so or not, it will. All right. As a matter of fact, I think back to like high school, right? Think back to your high school days. There's some things that you begin to say in conversation with people, words you use, maybe the tone of your voice, the way you say things, that are a direct relation to who you hang out with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? In high school, like I would cuss a lot because I looked at my circle of friends. And what do you think their language was like? Yeah. Every other word was an F word, right? And so that began to wear on me. You see it even in like little kids, right? Like if one kid goes and hangs out with another kid over a weekend or a long, a couple days where they're spending the night or hanging out constantly, right? They even begin to mimic each other, their actions, how they say things, like the way they say them, right? Because it's just human nature. You mimic, you echo those people that you spend the closest amount of time to. Right. And so
that's good, man. When
you're looking at your friendships, you need to look at their life very carefully, because you will begin to mimic the things that they do.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, like that's scripture. Those are scripture sayings of like these warnings that come from scripture that say, hey, be careful with who you are intentional with your time with, because you'll begin to look just like them.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah, man. So how do I know that I'm being a good friend? Like I want to make sure that I'm pouring myself out and just being the best friend that I could be and following all these scriptural advice. Yeah. I want to be that for you and for all my other friends that I have. Be like, how do I make sure, or how do I know I'm being a good friend?
Yeah. I think, being a good friend requires you to love deeply. And, there's something that gets kind of misspoken, I think, a lot in our culture. Just because you love somebody doesn't mean you agree with everything they do. Right? We're in this culture that says, if you love me, you're going to accept me exactly as I am. If you love me, you're going to agree with everything that I'm doing. And that's not the case. And so being a friend is really hard, because you should be loving deeply in your friendships. But sometimes love looks like, hey, you should really stop doing that. You're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, you should really not live that way because you say you're a Christian and that's not really what Christ would do. Or if some of your friends are non-believers, like loving them looks really hard because you're going to have to share things with them that are very hard truths,
Right.
but in love. And I think in those relationships where you're really close friends and they know that you actually love them, they're a lot more receptive to some of those hard truths.
Yeah.
Because they know that you're doing it because you love them. And so I think you want to know how you're being a good friend. It's how well are you loving those people that you call your friends? I think that's the bottom line.
That's good, man. That's really good. I like what you said on just because you love them and just because you're friends with them doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say or everything they do. And I think that's super important. Like, we'll harp on that again because we are living in a culture that advocates for that, right? Like, there's so many examples in real world situations where, you know, you see it all over social media, all over, even in real life, where if somebody believes something, you almost have to believe in it as well, or else you're qualified as a bad friend, right? There's a lot of examples of that. But I think, you know, as countercultural as God is, like, we have to be that, right, to our friends, because if not, then there's no growth that happens, right? It's just all.
We were actually literally talking about this last night in our men's discipleship group. Like, we're sitting around this table and we're talking about this idea because we do everything in love, right? That's a verse that we had to memorize. And so, like, we are talking about what does that actually mean to, like, do everything in love? Because so oftentimes, like, the one argument that people will make of, like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with sinners and do what they do and all that stuff, right? Well, Jesus did it. Like, Jesus hung out with sinners. And I think, like, you have to remember, like, yeah, he did hang out with sinners, but he chose to hang out with sinners for a single purpose.
Right.
Like, he chose to hang out with them to bring light into a dark world.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we get the first half of, like, yeah, I'm going to go hang out with these people, but we don't get the second half of, like, actually being a light to a dark world.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to hang out because it's fun and it's comfortable, but we don't want to do the part that's, like, the hard part of being a light to a dark world. And so in a way, people are like, well, that's kind of shallow that you're just being friends with people because you want to, like, convert them. Mm-hmm. And I would actually argue back with the fact of, I want to be friends with people because I love and care for them. And if I love and care for them, wouldn't I want to save their life?
Yeah.
And so it's not like you're like on just this conversion rampage where you're just, like, getting to know people to save them. But in a way, you're getting to know people exactly where they are and being a good friend. And when you are a good friend, you want to do what is absolute, like, best for them. And so in our world, like, we know that this world is fleeting and it's temporary. And so why am I going to focus so much on the here and now when I could actually, like, push them towards looking at eternity and saving their life forever, right? And so I think that it's just, like, it's one of those things that, like, yeah, you should be you should be having friends who aren't Christians because we're called to go and to be, you know, the light to a dark world, right? A city on a hill, like, that's, you know, light that's shining in really dark places. And if you're not actually doing that, then you're not actually fulfilling the call of the Great Commission and what Jesus told you to do.
Yeah.
But that can't also be a crutch where it's like, I'm just going to go hang out with these people because it's fun.
Right.
And I'm going to be their friend because they need Jesus, but we're never actually going to talk about Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an interesting one, man. And even Jesus, like, would hang out with sinners, but a lot of the times he brought them into his circles, right? Or a lot of the times he went, like, it's Jesus, right? He's perfect. It's hard to, like, say, well, Jesus did that. It's like, well, yeah, he's also perfect, right? And so it's very interesting to think about it through that lens. And I think some of the harder questions, some of the harder topics you'll talk about with friends are because you love them or because they love you. Yeah. And I think that's something that's overlooked, and it can be kind of scary sometimes. Obviously there's like a right way to go about stuff like that, but you know, you just don't throw it in their face.
Yeah. You speak truth in love. And again, like, love is the root of all of these things. And if you're not actually loving people who aren't like you, then you're missing out on the part where you're called to go and love.
Right.
Like, think about this, right? If you're doing something wrong, and somebody who you don't know comes up to you and says, like, you're an idiot, you're a fool, like, stop doing that, it's wrong. Are you actually going to listen to that person?
Nah.
Probably not, right? But if you're doing the same thing that's wrong and somebody that you love and you trust says, hey, like, you know that that's not good for you, it's going to lead you to do X, Y, Z, like, it's only going to lead you to end up hurting yourself, would you perhaps maybe then listen to that? Yeah. And it may not mean you're going to change, but you're at least going to listen to the person who does it out of love. Yeah. Right. And so that's a really good point of, like, yeah, it's truth and love. And, like, Jesus was the perfect example of this, right? Like, he he goes to the prostitute that's about to be stoned, and he's like, whoever has sin, cast the first stone. Of course, nobody does it,
Right.
because they don't have the right to. Jesus doesn't do it, even though he does have the right to. And then he picks her up and he says, go and sin no more. Right. He loves, but then he gives her the truth. Like,
Right.
I think that's the example to look to.
No,
and it's
good,
really
man.
hard.
It's
hard. It's not an easy thing to sit and have those conversations with people. But friendship, I don't think is easy. Like, I think we've just misconstrued this idea of friendship, and that's like something like it's easy and it's fun and like, honestly, like your true friendships, there is moments in those friendships that aren't fun.
Yeah. I agree, man. I think that's just like with any relationship that you value, there's gonna be ups and there's gonna be downs, right?
For sure.
And I think that's part of it. And that actually happened to my wife and I with our church, right? And it's not just because, like it's like two friends that we look up to and we trust. They approached us and they were talking to us about like how we moved in with each other before marriage, which, long story. But at the end of the day, it was such an emotional conversation because A, it was really freaking hard for them to say it and for us to hear it. And B, like we knew they were right. And so of course there was some pushback on our end. We were like, oh, this is unacceptable the way that they, talk to us, whatever we said. But ultimately, whenever we got past that anger and that hurt, it wasn't like it was hurt because we were embarrassed, I think, more so than how they even said it or what was said. But like we got past it and it like strengthened our friendship and it strengthened our relationship with each other and it strengthened our relationship with God. And so like, I think that's the ultimate goal of friendship is to grow and to point you towards Christ, given that those friends are Christ-fearing people. And I mean, it's nothing but good things that come out of it, and it's the hard conversations are hard, but they lead to like, better, greener grass on the other side. You know what I mean? So
I think when you look at scripture, you realize that we weren't meant to live alone.
Yeah.
Like even God himself is in the Trinity, right? Father, Son, Spirit, like not meant to live alone. And so like friendship is hugely important. And so I think, again, like we talked about it several times on this podcast already, like if you don't have a close group of friends, would you please go get involved in your local church? Like, would you get involved in a small group? Would you get involved with people who are chasing after the same things you are, because you are going to have moments in your life where you need friends. And if all of your friends aren't chasing after the same things you are when you need them, they're going to lead you astray.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just an encouragement overall. It's like, man, find some friends that are good friends that are chasing after the same things you are, and then get close with them. Like, build those relationships strong, deep, so that when you need friends, because you're going to need friends, that they're there for you. So if you need a good place to read about friendship, go read Proverbs.
Proverbs is solid.
It's
a lot. There's a ton here in my notes, but
yeah,
man, friends are good. And like the ones that aren't good will probably leave you in your times where you need them the most.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
They're super important to love us and to correct us whenever we're off course. So
for sure.
That's awesome.
Need friends. Get some.
You're welcome for being your friend, bro. You're welcome.
All
right. Who's your creative, dude? That was a good conversation. Who's your creative of this week?
Yeah. Creative this week is it's a company I found on Instagram. It's called Push Project. Go follow them on Instagram. Really cool. They do merch. They do like hats, shirts, hoodies. They do flags. Like they do all this really cool stuff. It looks dope, but it's all about creating conversations around gospel truths, right? And so you see these things and it's like one-liners that makes you ask a question. And that's like their whole goal is they want to start the conversation. And so they're giving you these means to go and start conversations. And so go check them out. They've got really cool stuff. I probably should have like worn one or something. Anyways,
do you have one?
No, I don't.
Not yet,
I did
bro.
look and I was trying to see which one I wanted this last week.
Let's go.
They got good stuff. Go check them out.
That's good. Mine's actually very similar to that. They're called the Visual Worship Project, and they're on Instagram as well. And it's very similar to what he just said, but the main thing that they do is like weekly prompts to encourage, like worship and creativity. And so they just do cool graphics and cool reminders of biblical truths that prompt the questions and to get you thinking about Christ and to honestly inspire worship. And then also creativity, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah,
there's some,
sure.
Dude, there's some incredibly talented like pages out there that are
no doubt
Christian organizations, and they're like, their merch and their graphics are so sweet, man.
Come
They're
sponsor
so
me.
fire.
You can send me stuff and I will wear it on the podcast. Any of you companies that are out there,
Yeah, I mean,
drop us one and we will gladly wear it and promote it.
drop us 2 because there's 2 of us.
Drop us one. We'll share it. We'll wear the same shirt in the episode.
All right, man. Thanks for being my friend. We'll see you guys in the next
All right,
episode.
later, guys.